But in 1908, the British concept of amateurism was still an issue for the Olympics.
By the Olympic oath, I ask only one thing: loyalty to sport. It's the sportsman's spirit that interests me, and not respect of that ridiculous English concept which allows only lone millionaires to dedicate themselves to sport.
Although athletes were not yet being paid, the United States would bring coaches, high-tech equipment, new technology and hard-hitting tactics, as well as patriotic supporters.
From the British point of view, in which their definition of amateurism was one in which athletes did not take sport seriously, did not use professional coaches, did not spend all their time training, the Americans were certainly professional in all those ways. They had professional coaches, intense preparation for training, a sort of win-at-all-cost mentality.
Desborough decided to even up the balance of advantage a bit by ensuring that all 800 judges were British. But little did they suspect how each nation would interpret the rules in their own particular way. A hint of the furore to come was epitomised by a New York Times cartoon, which depicted the British Lion crashing into a brick wall. 2,022 athletes were selected to compete. Of these, only 44 were women. With the international team selected, there was the opening ceremony to organise. De Coubertin wanted this event to be the most spectacular ever held, and nothing would satisfy his ambition.
Symbols were needed to stir the imagination and stimulate ambition, and they were found. It took, however, a considerable time for the Olympic ceremonies to mature and gain body. If the image of God were replaced for each athlete by the flag of their country, the grandeur of the ceremony would surely not fail to be enhanced. And the appropriateness of modernization is so obvious, there is no need to insist on it.
It was the first time that teams were paraded behind their national flags and as teams and paraded in front of the king. It was a thrill for all these people to be greeted by the King of England in celebrating the opening of the Olympic Games. It was a major step forward, and it was a complete new style of bringing nationalism into the Olympic Games.
But in fact, on the day, the ceremony did not go according to plan.
One of the rows was over the fact that there seemed to be no American flags flying at the stadium. And the British were very quick to apologise, but nonetheless, the Americans were determined to take offence over this.
The English taunted us in every conceivable way. They even ridiculed our flag.
There were rows between the Russian team and the Finnish team about who should walk in and under which flag and in what order. But there was a particularly bitter aspect to a great deal of the controversy that was going on. The British announced shortly before the Games that any Irish athletes would have to run for Great Britain.
The Irish Americans felt Irish and American. They certainly did not feel British. That was very clear. And they were quite upset that the Irish competing for the British team had to compete under the British flag.
And at this stage, a number of Irish athletes refused to compete. This was, of course, highly political. There was the height of the battle over Home Rule.
At this stage, I was ready to pull out. No American flag, the Irish being forced to appear under the Union Jack. The British are 25 years behind America in sports, and 110 has far too many events organized for these Olympics anyway.
So, with His Majesty, we declared the Games of London open.
Well, as the American Ralph Rose marched with the American flag in front of the royal box where the King and Queen of England were sat, already little bits of disruption and organisational errors had created a bit of an atmosphere, and Ralph Rose didn't dip the flag in front of the King. And that became a major diplomatic incident, the fact that the Americans hadn't acknowledged the King of England.
The legend goes that one of the American athletes, Ralph Rose, the flag bearer, or his teammate, another Irish American, Martin Sheridan, also shouted,
"This flag dips to no earthly king."
This official diplomatic incident would create a tradition which continues to this day. American teams still refused to lower their flag at international events. During the Second World War, the American Congress even passed an act to formalize the tradition. To create respect for the national flag, it was ordered that it should never be dipped for any person or thing. From this moment on, Sullivan lodged at least one protest with the press every day. The sensationalist reports which resulted only served to fuel rivalries and to escalate underlying tensions. The unexpected benefit of the controversies was a surge in audience attendance. Sullivan would find plenty to complain about. The American pole vaulters, for example, were not allowed to dig a hole for their poles, a technique well established in the United States. Even newspaper cartoons betrayed a competitive tone. After an audacious robbery in America,
there's been another highway robbery in broad daylight. Why, such a thing couldn't happen in England.
No? I understand you never get any broad daylight in England.
But the greatest controversy would be provoked by the tug of war. The British side was represented by police teams. The first round was between the Liverpool Police and the United States.
Legs now, Simon. Purse. More legs, Nick. Purse. Keep going.
The event was all over the press.
The United States remained as competitors for the shortest time on record. The Liverpool Police pulled them over the line almost as soon as they threw their weight on the rope.
English unfair in Olympic Games. Liverpool Police wear monstrous shoes that arouse ire of Americans who kick in vain. I mean, the British know the rules, don't they? That no competitor shall wear prepared boots or shoes with any projecting nails, tips, sprigs, points, hollows, or projections of any kind.
The flurry of indignant complaints from American press and athletic organisations stirred the captain of the London police team to offer a restaging of the event.
I have a letter here from H. Duke, Captain City Police Team. I should like to state that the City of London Police Team are prepared to make a match with the Americans before they return home, in which both teams shall pull in stocking feet. We do not wish the Americans to go back home dissatisfied with their beating, and we therefore give them the opportunity of showing if they are as capable tuggers as they claim to be.
But for the Americans, champions of track and field, this debacle could just about be excused. There were more important events on which to focus, such as the 400-metre race.
We're here to win the championships in field sports, and we're going to do it. Despite all the handicaps we're suffering.
One of the big races that the British public had been looking forward to was to feature Wyndham Haswell, who was a very well-known distance runner at the time. He'd set British records and he'd become very famous.
Haswell, the epitome of the English amateur, was the favourite. Educated at Charterhouse School, then at Sandhurst, Haswell then joined the Highland Light Infantry to fight the Second Boer War. On his return, Haswell turned his mind to athletics, and the 400 metres in particular. Michael Johnson is a 5-time Olympic gold medalist and 9-time world champion. He's the greatest 400 metres runner of his generation.
The most difficult thing about running 400 meters is developing a strategy, because there's no textbook formula for it. There is no, this is what you do if you're a 400 meter runner to run fast times, because it's different for every athlete.
I wanted to prove to my father that I could make something of myself in the world on my own account, and also to prove to him that I was also a winner.
And he did prove he was a winner. By 1906, Haswell had won the Scottish 100, 220, 440 and 8 80-yard titles, as well as the Athens intercalated Olympic silver medal for the 400 metres. With a qualifying time of 48.4 seconds, Wyndham was the fastest of the competitors. For the final, Wyndham faced 3 Americans, Will Robbins, John Taylor and John Carpenter. The American team used every method available to prepare them for the race, yet Wyndham Haswell was full of confidence.
About the only thing that could have stopped me was a bullet in the back. I knew I could beat all of them.
Clearly marked running lanes were not yet used by athletes in the stadium. This would become a big problem in the 400-metre race, the most controversial finish in athletics history.